Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai
Jai
Guru.
Guru.
Hello, welcome to Yogananda podcast. We're on chapter 31, and we're on the second part of this wonderful chapter. I'm today here with Chris and Lauren. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good. I'm a bit blinded today because there's a bit of light somehow coming from outside, and it's
Like the halo.
it's not.
Just say what it is, Greg. It's a halo.
It's not a natural effulgence, unless you're that. Not yet.
Coincidence.
Yeah, and it's blocking out half my screen, so I apologize if it does. But this, if it does impact us. But this episode, we're going to take a look at why you should take Kriya initiation or apply for it, why you need a guru in life, and whether or not you should make ambitious promises to him that you may not be able to sustain. But before we do that, go through all that, Lauren, what happened last week?
No, we started the chapter last week, which is very nice. And we met Lahiri Mahashaya's life companion, and that was Srimati Kashi Moni. And we delved into a bit of their relationship and how she found out that her husband was this great master. She woke up one day and saw him surrounded by angels, and thenceforth made him her guru rather than her husband. So here we are now, about to go into the next bit.
Yes, this section starts with the very sincere request by Srimati Kashi Moni, the wife of Lahiri Mahashaya, saying, agreeing to Lahiri Mahashaya's request of her taking Diksha, which is interesting because he asked her. She didn't ask him. Of course, in karmic ways, through very many past lifetimes, she has got to a position where she is married to a guru avatar in Lahiri Mahashaya. So she must have wanted this, whether or not it was outwardly expressed by her or through the seed thought of Lahiri Mahashaya planting the question.
Do you guys think that it's us who asks for Kriya, or do you think that it's Guruji prompting us to get it? Or a bit of both? What do you think, Chris?
I think it's us. And the guru is sent us by God to answer our heart's desires or to be reunited. So I think it's been said by gurus essentially like, if you guys didn't want me, I wouldn't be here. I would be united. We've talked about it a lot with Guruji. He essentially did want to simply be reunited with God and dissolve back into the oneness, but he was denied that. Right, so to do this, to kind of meet our demands, meet our prayers. So yeah, I'd say it's the former.
Very interesting and intriguing question. I think it's ultimately you, because you have the free will to, forever dwell in delusion, or to take the spiritual path. Which leads me to my question, Lauren. You beat me to the hard question. My question is, why? How did you decide to take Kriya yourself? For me, I didn't really put much thought into it. I'd been practicing for maybe a decade, yoga and Guruji's techniques for maybe 5 years. And I don't know, I just thought it was just the next thing that I needed to do. I didn't realize the significance of what I was requesting. So I even filled out the form. The form has, really profound questions about your practices and why you want to take Kriya. But I can't say I had a, real introspection moment and asked the questions, but it was just a natural longing that was fulfilled. And I feel like a lot of people probably have a soul searching thing before applying for Kriya, but that was not the case in my experience. But maybe there was some internal thing that I wasn't aware of that had happened, over the past few lifetimes. Who knows?
Yeah. What I've come to realize is that so much of our decisions are simply a consequence of millions of decisions that we've made in the past that accumulate to this moment, and we're almost bearing witness to what is in front of us, what we end up doing. That makes sense, because so much of it is so subconscious. And it always baffles me when I see people having read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I see people knowing about the subject and not doing Kriya. It completely baffles me. So I would be in the camp where, similar to Kriya, kind of going through the motions, kind of going with the flow. And the only caveat that I would say to this is that I think at one point I thought maybe this just isn't going to be right for me, because if you remember when I was applying, I really took it quite seriously to say, like, I must be doing my practices perfectly, because it says you have to meet some sort of threshold of practice. You have to be practicing certain things for a certain amount of time. And I'd been going through sort of this gypsy lifestyle where nothing was set and my routines were all over the place. So I delayed and delayed and delayed. And when I tried to do it, there were some blockers. So eventually when I got it, it was this kind of culmination of moments. It was very rewarding, very satisfying. So it was definitely the thing that I knew I was going to do. It was coming. It was just a matter of time. But why that was, I couldn't tell you, because it doesn't seem obvious to me that it's obvious to everybody else. It's kind of perplexing as to why it is something we're driven to do. Just that it is for others that they're really not that interested. So.
Yeah, it's like something kind of sparks and clicks within you, and it's like, oh right, okay, that's it. Yeah, I had a kind of similar experience. I remember when I got the lessons, I can't remember at which point it was, but there was a point, and I remember going, like, come on, you want Kriya. This is super important to do. But I was like you, Chris. I was like, well, I have to do this. I want to meet a certain requirement in my own mind as well as the ones from SRF. So I just kind of went full ham at it. But it's similar to you, because I really struggled in the beginning to build the habit of meditation and kind of get over all those old habits. And it took such a lot, a lot of 2 step forwards, 1 back, or 3 steps forward, 3 back, and just like a lot of effort. So yeah, like you, when I got to that point, it was like kind of a bit monumental, because oh right, yeah, you actually you did it, in that sense that you've overcome all those little things, and now the real work begins. But it's interesting, like I certainly like felt the importance, like the deep importance of it. But I don't think I really understood just how deep and just how like special and sacred, and how much of a true relationship it is to take the Kriya path. Like it's not just a technique. I mean, it's the technique, but also it's that relationship with the guru and with the lineage, and then everything else that comes with it. And I don't know, I find that it's something that kind of reveals itself over time, and that probably hasn't stopped yet. I feel like I'm just kind of discovering just like the edges of it all. Yeah.
Just very quickly before we move on, my dad is like a Sri Peshwar figure in my life, and he's full of wisdom, and he's always coming up with gems. Yeah. And one of the gems I remember him saying is just that there are 2 types of people on earth. There's those who talk and those who do, and you want to be the person that does things. And when it came to this, somebody said, "Here's the key to life. It's yours if you want to take it." And that was Kriya for me. because there's so much talk in liberation, being enlightened, and what does this mean? There's all sorts of false gurus, and everything like that. But this is a methodology, a key to unlocking life, and it's so interesting that we're so lucky that Guruji's really kind of given us that. So to me, it's like, okay, well, that's the thing to do. Put your effort into it, and Guruji says you'll be rewarded. So less talk, more action.
Yes, thank you very much for that. That's very inspiring insight from the both of you. I felt like because I've heard your experiences on how seriously you took the application compared to mine. I felt that it was good that we have some balance, because I'm sure listeners probably more fall into your camp than mine, but there will be no doubt other listeners that are also in my camp of just doing it because it just feels that's what I need to do now. When Lahiri Mahashaya asks, ask her to have Kriya initiation to receive it. There, she says, she agrees just straight away. And there's a lovely reading about why or what happens when you take Kriya initiation, which is important, I think, for what's about to come in the Lahiri Mahashaya's wife's life in this next section of the chapter. So before we go to the next section, let's read this section from God Talks with Arjuna, chapter 3, verse 24 on initiation.
After spiritual initiation by a guru, a devotee learns to open his spiritual eye, and by cultivating wisdom, he enters the castle of a Vaishya.
The caste.
The caste of a Vaishya. And then by fighting the senses, he rises to the higher caste of a Kshatriya. Eventually, attaining God realization, he becomes a Brahmin, one with Brahmin spirit.
The vested priesthood, not the sages in India, have fixed the four castes as non-interchangeable, in defiance of early Vedic teachings about natural and progressively interchangeable castes. Even today, however, a Hindu who adopts the religious path is considered beyond caste. He receives from his guru a spiritual initiation in which he casts off his old self with all of its egoistic identifications of family, name, possessions, and desires, and receives a new birth and a new name that betrays no caste identification.
Indeed. So, this is the ultimate meaning of the caste system, of course. And Lahiri Mahashaya and his wife would have been Brahmins by birth and by quality. So we have this rare example where Guruji describes that the caste isn't just a cultural designation, but the deeper meaning is that what are your qualities? And we know that that Lahiri Mahashaya was a Brahmin because Guruji tells us that he was born into the Brahmin caste. But also, if you look at Lahiri Mahashaya's picture of him meditating, the most famous one, you see a little string, janu, it's called, which Brahmins wear when after taking initiation from their childhood, and they wear it through their whole lives as a mark of that initiation. So we don't have that after our initiation, but we obviously belong to the lineage of succession, spiritual succession that goes all the way back to Shankaracharya and Bhagavan Krishna and Jesus Christ, of course. So very nice. So she says, I'm sorry not to have had the blessing earlier in my life, which is interesting because then Guruji says, Lahiri Mahashaya says, the time wasn't ripe. And he smiled consolingly. He said, much of your karma I have silently helped you work out. This is interesting because now I'm going to ask you the question, do you need a guru? Because had she not had this this guru relationship, marriage relationship with Lahiri Mahashaya, he would not have asked her, and she may not have gone through this process, and she may not have had this wonderfully spiritual experience. But overall, the question still remains for the large populace who aren't married to avatars and who aren't around, you know, uh, venerable personages such as the Mahashaya. Do we need a guru? So there's a good reading on this subject, and it's from God Talks with Arjuna, chapter 18, verse 56, which I just read two or 3 days ago. Lauren, do you want to start us off?
Over and above performing faithfully all one's duties, taking shelter in me, it is by my pleasure a devotee obtains the eternal unchangeable state. The devotee beholds God as the shelter of all creatures, and himself as unsheltered by any other power. Without attachment to the fruits of his efforts, he continuously engages in God-united yoga activities and all other divinely obligatory duties, just to please God. After meeting all the requirements of the laws of liberation, the yogi ultimately finds, by the freely given grace of God, by my pleasure, the eternal state of liberation.
The quality of a yogi's meditation and other actions, the guru's help, and God's grace. These are the three requisitions of liberation, requisites of liberation. No matter how much a devotee strives for salvation, and he is required to make the effort wholeheartedly for God. That effort constitutes only 25% of the requirement for liberation. Another 25% depends on his guru's blessings, spiritually stimulating the disciple's striving. But the guru's help and the devotee's effort notwithstanding, it is necessary to have also God's grace, which may be said to constitute the remaining 50% of the requirements.
So I'm glad I didn't ask you the question, do you need a guru? Because Guruji has answered it for us. So there's no chance of us getting it wrong. The answer is a categorical and wholehearted yes, you need a guru. And the explanation, I think the most important sentence here is no matter how much a devotee strives for salvation, and he's required to make the whole effort wholeheartedly, that effort only constitutes 25% of the requirement of liberation. And you know my appreciation for maths, so this ratio is very poorly skewed in our favor. But we only have to make 25% of the effort, but we do need a guru to help us with the 25%, and then therefore that enables us to get the 50% of the grace of Guru God.
When you asked that question, Priyank, it reminded me of something that Guruji said, and I managed to find the quote. So I'll read it now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Guruji said, "When you are moving blindly through the valley of life, stumbling in darkness, you need the help of someone who has eyes. You need a guru. To follow one who is enlightened is the only way out of the great muddle that has been created in the world. I never found true happiness and freedom until I met my guru, he who was spiritually interested in me and who had the wisdom to guide me."
Mm-hmm. Such a poignant description of why we need a guru, isn't it? A real jarring kind of obvious when you think about it. But lots of people do not think you need a guru, don't they? And probably, go on, Lauren.
I was going to say, I guess it depends on your goal in life. You know, for some people, that's not where they're at the moment. But eventually, to get home to God, you need the guru. But, you know, maybe for some people, that's not where they are, and that's okay. We're all in different spots in our journey back home. But yeah, eventually, if you want to get out of the mess, you need a guru for sure.
Yes. But if you speak to some people that are very religious, very spiritual, some of them, and I've met a few of these, will say, I don't need a guru to get to Krishna. Krishna's right in front of me. and a guru will only get in between me and Krishna, which logically you can kind of see the argument, can't you? But then when you really understand what a guru does and Guruji's magic ratio explanation here, that blows all of that logic out the window, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah,
Is Krishna not a guru though?
he would constitute 50%, I think.
But then by that token, would they not all, because they're all one with God?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Well, when we pray
Hmm.
to Christ, Krishna, yada yada, and they are considered the gurus, right? Or the lineage. So if you're really kind of getting into the tiny details, the tiny ones, could by a
Yeah,
tiny token Krishna be considered a guru?
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, and maybe the thing to clarify is that when we accept the guru, we take the baptism,
Mm,
and I think that relationship has to be, it's kind of an eternal contract. And I'm speaking out of turn because I don't know, but whenever I thought the same thing, Lauren, I thought, well, maybe isn't it the same with Jesus Christ? Because many, Christians, that's the only way to God is through Jesus. And therefore, is that the guru? Are they accepting the guru? They take back baptism and so on. But the spiritual baptism that we take, I think, it's a contract that is a little bit different from a devotion with
mm,
with somebody who could be a guru. Um, so the step of accepting and going into that relationship, I think that might be the differentiator, but
mm.
I don't
Mm.
know.
Yeah, you've made it grey in my mind, the two of you.
Sorry,
But
I was just thinking, oh, if I was on the other side of the coin, if I was that
Yeah.
person, what would they be thinking? And maybe
mm,
that's the thought process,
but
but
they've dismissed
yeah,
the divinity of the gurus that come after Krishna, because Krishna's the only one, because they think that that they want your worship or whatever. But obviously we know that not to be the case. But the
yeah,
other interesting point you made is not everyone's at that stage where they want liberation. And of course, that's true. But this section of the Gita and this section of Lahiri Mahashaya and his wife, she isn't just talking about spiritual experiences, because we're going to find out in a minute she has, she sees the spiritual eye. She's talking about liberation. So if we're talking about the highest spiritual experience, i.e., getting out of here, then you have to, I think, have the grace of God and gurus rather than just being spiritually advanced, which is a
yeah,
separate thing,
yeah,
because Lahiri Mahashaya says the time wasn't ripe. He says much of the karma have silently helped you work out. So she has had the benefit of, the Guruji untangling her knots without her even knowing painlessly. How beautiful does that sound,
Mm.
right? But he says, now you are willing and ready. And touched, she says, he touched my forehead and masses of whirling light appeared. The radiance gradually formed itself into the opal blue spiritual eye, ringed in gold and centered with a white pentagonal star in the spiritual eye, which is an experience that she has had 1 second into her life as accepting Lady Mahashaya as a guru.
Mm.
So he has now transferred this experience to her, which answers one of the questions I was going to ask you, which was, do you need Kriya? Do you need the Kriya technique to become liberated or to see the spiritual eye? And you don't, because she wasn't yet practicer. She wasn't yet practicing, and not in this life anyway, Kriya.
Mm.
So you don't necessarily need it. But of course, the spiritual eye isn't the goal. It's just one of the beautiful things along the way, because we have to, go through the spiritual eye and to God. So yes, we do need a guru. No, we don't necessarily need Kriya, but then we won't be taking the airplane route to our goal. So it's a very complex and nuanced set of questions that we have to ask ourselves, isn't it? And we need obviously
it's just better not to think, Priyank. Just do what Guruji says. You'll be all these questions.
we live in a world of thinkers, though, Chris. People overthink it.
I think therefore I
Cogito. So she's had a wonderful and beautiful experience straight away. What a blessed soul she must be.
Yeah.
And Lahiri Mahashaya says, penetrate your consciousness through the star into the kingdom of the infinite. He's saying, go through the spiritual eye. And she says, my guru's voice had a new note, soft like distant music. Oh, imagine if we had a recording of Lahiri Mahashaya's voice, or Sri Yukteswara's voice, or Babaji's voice, or Krishna's voice, or Jesus Christ. Yeah, it would be phenomenal, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But she says, so the initiation happened and she saw the spiritual eye, and then she said that his voice had a new note. But I wonder whether or not his voice was exactly the same, but now that she's had one of the highest spiritual experiences, she's now able to see more clearly and hear more clearly the truth, which is his voice was obviously one of those beautiful sounds that she would ever hear in that birth, probably. Yeah. So next section's quite mystical. She said, vision after vision broke as oceanic surf on the shores of my soul, and the panoramic spheres finally melted in a sea of bliss. So what I read from that is that a wave of past life experiences and memories had come back. She said, vision after vision broke on her, as oceanic surf on the shores of her soul. And then she says that the panoramic spheres finally melted in a sea of bliss, which I take to mean that those memories all dissolved, and therefore they were pretty insignificant because they'd come and they went like the waves of an ocean on a beach, because where you were and what you did is not as important as where you are, perhaps, because she's got everything she needs now. The mistakes she may or may not have made in the past are all washed away. Yeah. So as Sri Yukteswara says, right, the lives of all men are tinged with shame.
Are dark and full of.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that can be forgotten at this point, the most blessed point in your life. She says, I lost myself in ever surging blessedness.
Yeah.
I think she's having all these experiences in the space of, I don't know, a few minutes, maybe an hour, who knows. But I feel like if we like expand our time frame and forget that time is an illusion, we take like a macro view of like, say, 10 years, if we've been on the path for 10 years. I feel like if you distilled the 10 years into this, you could probably say a lot of this yourself, couldn't you? Even though you've had to really, really strive to get to where you are in terms of, the surging blessedness that you experience in meditation or in moments of deep devotion. You do experience them, and Guruji gives us that. And so we are kind of, may not be as advanced as this blessed wife of Lahiri Mahashaya, but I feel like we do get to experience a lot of what she's experienced as parts of the path that we're on.
For those who maybe haven't started on the path, I've heard, I think Guruji may have said it in lessons, I'm trying to remember, that whenever a devotee comes on the path, they can have moments of inspiration that God reveals to us to actually confirm and say, yep, you're on the right path. And then it may drop off. You might be chasing that moment, in your practice for some time, maybe not be able to relive that. It just kind of reminds me of something I heard or read somewhere. I can't quite remember Guruji's writings exactly on this, but God rewards us in the moment. But yet, as devotees, we all still have so much work to do. It is the beginning of a new path. So yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I keep forgetting that not all listeners are members in Kriya bands. I apologize. But hopefully it gives everyone a chance to kind of look at why you would want to join SRF, or why you'd want to take Kriya, or why you'd want to study Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings a bit more, and yeah, maybe some inspiration perhaps, hopefully.
Yeah, it kind of just reflecting on something you said there, Priyank, about time and memories, or these visions crashing on the shores of your mind. Our lives are pivoted around moments, and then the rest of them are sort of cyclical in their nature, as it were. You kind of fall into habits and routines, and then you maybe pivot again through maybe a breakthrough upwards or downwards, whatever it might be, whatever path you're on. And these waves, whenever I'm thinking about this, digesting this, you could compress lifetimes in these visions just through those pivotal sort of moments like this, where they're really significant in your life. So maybe you're quite right, Frank, in sort of surmising that maybe this is, wave upon wave of visions of moments, past lives that have brought her to this moment where she is now, and we're getting to experience with her.
Indeed, because not anyone can be blessed enough to spend this much time with an avatar she had, and even if it is in marriage. But she said, a few hours had passed when she later regained awareness of this world. And at that point, she received the Kriya, the blessed Kriya technique, which, of course, we're going to go into full detail here right now. Just kidding. we cannot go into. We're not allowed to discuss the techniques other than what's publicly available. And if you do want to study the techniques without having Kriya, there is some clues in God Talks with Arjuna. In particular, the verse, this is from memory, where Krishna says that the devotee swaps his incoming breath for his outcoming breath, and his outcoming breath for his incoming breath. You can find that verse. I've forgotten which one it is, but the Guruji describes Kriya there, and of course inside, of course, the chapter entitled "The Science of Kriya Yoga," which is chapter 26, which we did a few months ago. Okay, so the next section is about the blessed marriage to a guru. Because their marriage became not a ordinary marriage. It became a very spiritual marriage from that point forward. Sorry, what did you say now, Chris?
It wasn't really orthodox, was it? As far as marriages go.
Not at that point, but before you could argue it was. I mean, they had children,
yeah.
they had household life, and she didn't even know his stature up to this point. And this, I don't think we know exactly when in their marriage this was. I don't know how old their children were. But yeah, in my mind, they would have been, I don't know, 10, because a bit later she complains about him not having enough time for the children. So yeah, it would have been at some point, well into their marriage and their family life. But yeah, this marriage now becomes a spiritual marriage, because Lahiri Mahashaya then chose never to sleep in the same room, nor did he ever sleep. So not only did he not sleep together with his wife, he chose now to drop his his facade of an ordinary man, because that would then surmise that he didn't need to sleep at this point in the past, but he was doing so just to fulfill his wife's
I
expectations.
I can just see the comical sort of pictures of him sort of sleeping with one eye
Too.
closed. She's yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Of course, you can practice some techniques
Yeah.
lying down, can't you? And Lahiri Mahashaya obviously didn't need to practice any techniques.
Sri Yukteswar demonstrated that for Guruji.
I wonder, when Lahiri Mahashaya had his own initiation, I wonder when he got back home to his wife and children, or if he probably was married at that time. Can't remember. We'll have to look that up. But I think it's coming, I think a bit later in the book, The Christ-like Life of Lahiri Mahashaya.
Mhm.
If he then went home and told his wife, oh, I met this blessed soul. His name was Mahavdar Babaji. He took me and he made me a palace, and
Yeah.
I
At,
doubt he did. What
at
do you
this
think?
point, I'm wondering about the kids. How do you break this to the kids about
Mm,
what's going on currently
mm,
as well? So all these
yeah.
conversations would be fascinating. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, but obviously we're not privy to that. We'll have to
Mm.
wait some time in our quest for divine realization to probe these matters.
Yeah.
So they never slept together, nor did he ever sleep. He remained in the front room downstairs in the company of his disciples, both day and night. And if you look online, I believe you can find pictures of this room. And if you go to Lahiri Mahashaya's home, um, in Kashi or Varanasi, you'll see some ancient closed doors that never open other than Guru Purnima. And that's once a year. But there's priest that comes and does Guru Puja every morning. So like if you wait outside, he'll open the door and go in and you can take a glimpse. And there's like a courtyard, there's a small Shiva Linga temple on the right. And if you walk 6 meters through the doorway, you'll see the room that she is referring to, which unfortunately will be closed. Whereas as you see through those doors, if you're blessed enough to have the priest at the same time as you are there, but he won't let you in. But yeah, so it's all closed, unfortunately. But you can see pictures of it online, I believe. One day maybe we may have access to this blessed place. But his family, I believe, up to now, have been very protective over it, even though no one lives there. Hmm. Mysterious ways of God's divine plan. So he remained downstairs and obviously had disciples, and he would have given them spiritual counsel, etc., as we know. He says, and one of those spiritual counsel that he would have had would have been to Paramahansa Yogananda's mother, who brought Paramahansa Yogananda as an infant child, asked for the blessing. And of course, he said, "Mother, little mother, your son will be Guru." Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought it's sweet. And that's coming as well. No, I think that's already come. I forget. Maybe listeners can comment on that. So yeah,
Was it
sorry,
in the
Chris.
beginning chapters we covered
Possibly, yeah,
covered that instance? Yeah.
possibly. Um, so yeah, so she the lady then fell into a moment of silence, which is beautiful. And of course, we know our guru loves the periods of silence. And there's been a few moments such as these. There's probably about the 10th one. But every time that there's silence in the autobiography of Yogi, something significant has happened
Mhm.
or happening. And Guruji says, he's kind of recounting, he's saying, realizing the uniqueness of her relationship with the sublime Yogi, I finally ventured to ask a further question, further reminiscences. So realizing the uniqueness of their relationship. Now, this is a very profound concept because we also enter into what we may say is ordinary marriage, but we have an opportunity, as Lahiri Mahashaya's wife did, to turn it into a very spiritual union. And Guruji's wedding vows are a beautiful prod to allow that to happen. So if you ever can attend an SRF wedding, where one of the ministers, monks or YSS wedding, one of the ministers, nuns will conduct the ceremony. There'll be holy vows that Guruji gave. I have taken some excerpts, which essentially just distill what I think this uniqueness of the relationship would mean in this instance. So, Chris, do you want to read those out?
We will merge our desires for the highest common good. We will cooperate with each other that we may harmonize the laws of truth with the laws of truth. We will love each other unconditionally. Through our love, we will forgive each other always. We will be loyal to each other to demonstrate our capacity for divine loyalty. May we care for each other unselfishly, ever increasingly, until our love becomes the love of God. We are united to fulfill the law of creation and through mutual love to find the infinite divine love. May our souls join the one Spirit of God.
Really beautiful. Thank you for reading that so wonderfully, Chris. Yeah, so really profound ideals. And marriage is, of course, a great opportunity to work on some of those together with a partner. Of course, it has its pitfalls, but if you have the right partner and you're both in a good stage of your spiritual evolution, I think it can probably help you, even though the divorce rates are so high. I wonder what divorce rates in SRF and YSS are, because I can't imagine there'll be, well, I hope they'll be higher, but I doubt, I feel like I doubt that they would be. I think it would just be normal because not that many people completely spiritualize their marriage.
Yeah, the premise is quite different in some ways than typical modern marriages. Yeah, and this I read out in part with my voice. And Priyank, the listeners and viewers, to give you a little bit of a nugget. Priyank read at my wedding, and I think the most emotional, well, one of the more emotional parts for me was when you read, Priyank, because you incorporated Guruji in there in your reading. It was so beautiful. I was like, so yeah, it's whenever you're in the moment, you realize just how much these things truly mean the weight behind them, and that was for me one of them. So thanks for bringing that in today.
It was a blessing that you asked me to say some words during the ceremony. Very, very blessed because such spiritual souls. Yeah. But yeah, Guruji asks, I finally ventured to ask for a further reminiscence, and she says comically, "You're greedy," to Mukunda or Swami Yogananda. Nevertheless, you shall have one more story. She smiled shyly. How sweet. I'll confess a sin that I committed against my Guruhusband. What a lovely word. Some months after my initiation, I began to feel forlorn and neglected. One morning, Lahiri Mahashaya entered this room to fetch an article, and I followed him. Overcome by delusion, I addressed him scathingly. You spend all your time with your disciples. What about me? What about your wife? What about your children? And she says, I regret that you don't interest yourself in providing more money for the family. Oh, that's tough, isn't it? That is tough. This comes back to my point. These vows that we have in this SRF wedding, and the vows we give during Kriya initiation are profound vows, aren't they? They're they're so easy to say. Like she's already acknowledged Lahiri Mahashaya as a guru and said, never from this day forward will I, see you as an ordinary husband. But she's slipped back. And it's so characteristic of all of us devotees that make these supreme, promises and vows because some of them are so difficult to achieve, aren't they?
I love reading this. And she's obviously shared it with the knowledge that this will be shared eventually, and we'd all be reading these words. I'm just so glad that not even the the height of accomplishment in Lahiri Mahashaya can get away from such
Lahiri
words.
Mahashaya's wife, yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so like habit, ego, and expectations of the old ways die hard, don't they?
The roles that we play as husband and wife, yeah.
But then the question remains, should we make such ambitious promises to God and gurus? Because the more ambitious the promise we make, the more likely we are to fall from that. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to do a long meditation twice a week, oh, you know what happens, you know what gets in the way.
I think in some ways you almost have to try. I don't really know if there's much of an option because the commitment that the guru gives to us is so monumental that we have to try. Even if it's a little bit like this 25% pops into my mind, even whatever you give, it's insurmountable what you receive back. Right. So you almost are obliged to try. And if you're a little bit scared by the promise, it's probably a good thing. You're stretching yourself. And that's, I suppose, how we grow.
Yeah, it's good to aim high. I'm with you, Chris. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm not really sure about this question, to be honest. I'm on a bit of a journey with it because I've made many a promise to Guruji that I haven't kept or tried to keep but haven't. And it's difficult because then when you don't, I think it's even harder because you've made that promise to your guru and you haven't kept it. And that kind of hits in a different way for me. So I'm kind of trying something out a bit different in recent days of like not making massive, big promise statements and, still aiming high, still trying my best, but like, I was thinking the other day, if Guruji was in physical form standing here, right in front of me, would I be making that promise to him? Would I look him in those physical eyes and say those words? So yeah, I'm trying to do something a little bit different. I don't know how it will pan out. I'll let you know. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, go on, Chris.
I think I went through a similar journey, Lauren, and I heard for goal setting, if you are ever to set some kind of goal or make a promise to yourself or whoever, do it at a level of humility to be able to assess where you truly are, because the guru can see through us so clearly. So if we make a promise to do X and the guru knows that we're not ready. I mean, look at Lahiri Mahashaya. Why the initiation and why this moment didn't come sooner is because he knew she wasn't ready. So she could have maybe promised the world, however those conversations might have gone, but he would have known when the time was right. So all the things that we're talking about really is just a matter of time and accumulated effort up to that time. So if you're at a point where you're really only going to be able to meditate for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, be able to do practices and then do your meditation on top of that. I think Guruji has said, do that, but do it with the intensity. Don't kid yourself. Don't sit there for an hour, kid yourself. So Guruji does say, like, here's the ideal, but if you're going to fall short of that, do these things, as a minimum, do them because everybody should be able to do the minimum, as it were. So yeah, no matter what we imagine and fabricate in our minds, the gurus can always see through. So it's a bit of a sort of fanciful idea that we would make a promise that we can't keep because the gurus would know anyway. But we probably can't keep it.
Yeah, I do think about that sometimes. Like when you're in periods where you think, oh, I'm not really doing as good as I could in any way or whatever. And sometimes I do think, yeah, like when Guruji took me on as a disciple, he knew all my
All the
pitfalls and
flaws. Yeah.
flaws and failures and maybe what I would eventually do or not do and still accepted me. So sometimes I have to remind myself of that, you know. Um, but yeah, going back to your question, Priya, I do remember hearing something very recently, and I think it was from Diama or could have been Miralini Ma, can't remember which, but she was basically saying, um, I think her words were, don't give lip to the guru, as in like don't make promises just like off the bat to the guru that you're not going to keep. Like be sincere with what you say. Um, so yeah, I guess there's a difference, if you're really trying to fulfill that promise and you don't make it, if you've tried, then you've tried, right? But yeah, if you're just saying stuff but not actually meaning it, maybe there's a difference.
Just one last thing on this for me. Maybe not often when we make promises do we define a time.
Yeah.
And so, whether it be in this lifetime or next, the guru knows that we will keep the promise because the guru has also made the promise to us that he will lead us to liberation. So you'll maybe keep more of your promises than what you might actually think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I remember that talk, Lauren. Don't play lip service.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a really profound topic, I think, and one that's exceptionally personal for each of us, isn't it? Must say I'm in Lauren's camp, Chris. You're 2-1.
Just to be clear, to recap,
You can't come to our camp. You already
the
declared your position, Chris.
make the promises you can keep. Yeah, and if you scare you a little bit, that's good. That's my position.
Indeed. But yeah, listeners, let us know what your thoughts are on this. So yeah, it's a tough one. So this next scene is comical and profound and silly and insane. All the words you can probably attribute to this, you could and justify it. So what happens is the master glanced at Srimati Kashi Moni, the wife, and he was gone. Lo and behold, awed and frightened, she heard a voice resounding from every part of the room. And Lahiri Mahashaya is reverberating that sound, saying, "It is all nothing, don't you see? How could a nothing like me produce riches for you?" Guruji, I cried, "I implore pardon 1,000,000 times. My sinful eyes can see you no more. Please appear in your sacred form." And the voice comes back from above her, which says, "I am here." I looked up and saw the master materialize in the air, his head touching the ceiling. What could you? It's difficult to even imagine this scene, isn't it? I think a lot of scenes from the autobiography have been portrayed in Amar Chitrakatha, like comics and pictures and AI and all this stuff, paintings. But this one I don't think has been done. Not that I've seen. Maybe listeners can send it. But it would look insane, wouldn't it? It would look absolutely crazy because his head is touching the ceiling, and it was quite. I believe that house isn't like a tall ceilinged house. It isn't like she was 2 meters above if he was 2 meters above her. I imagine she was probably bowing right now, if not on her knees, then at least with her, all on the floor. So he would have been maybe 2 feet above her, if that. But I'd say it is probably the strangest scene to imagine or picture in the book. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the how would you say, not the drama of it, but I suppose the context of it where he's really sending a message, like in direct response to a challenge that we're all able to glean from. I don't think I can't remember any other instance of what you might call as a miracle, is what we've talked about in a previous episode, than this, because this seems almost like a to and fro, like a bit of a shake from divinity. I don't know. Yeah, it's just unique. It's a very personal instance we're able to see.
Yeah. So in answering the question, why, what is the purpose of this scene? We know what the purpose of it was for Srimati Kashi Moni, but is it just to shake his wife's delusions, like in a really like powerful way, or is there something much more subtle going on, i.e., he, became more in touch with, or his will was being merged with God's will, and it became more and more subtle and weightless because someone's essentially, his wife is challenging him, his divinity, essentially, right? So he's then having to probably go within, if he's not already within, but he goes so within that he disappears, and his physical form is so subtle that it becomes weightless, that like a helium-filled balloon that's stuck to the ceiling. That's kind of potentially what could be happening here. He's almost weightless. But the other thing is that the voice was coming from every part of the room, which would imply that he'd become the room. His voice was filling the room, so he'd almost become transcendent in that moment. Or is it all of the above? I don't know, listeners, what do you think? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, it's so striking, and what I was trying to wrap my mind around before is you've helped me frame it in my mind as to why it's so striking, is because if we could see the context of which it is that it's being shared with us, is that everybody could walk a mile in the shoes, in this instance where you have had your path challenged. And so the path was laid out for you very clearly. And then somebody or yourself is challenged on materialistic basis. And this instance is so striking that it sticks in your mind. So that I think subconsciously it helps bolster the reader to continue on the spiritual path and not be the doubting Thomas. So this is like the doubting Thomas moment. And it's just such a striking scene that should you have a moment where yourself or somebody else instills doubt, that this might subconsciously come to you through Lahiri Mahashaya. Because the description, as you put it, Priyank, is extremely unique and one not to forget.
Yes, indeed. So listeners, let us know what you think of this sequence of events. I would love to hear other takes on this from the three of ours. I'll one day ask a monk actually what their experience of this section of the book is. But she now says his eyes were like blinding flames. Besides myself with fear, I lay sobbing at his feet after he had quietly descended to the floor. Just gets deeper and deeper, doesn't it? His eyes were like blinding flames. So it's almost like in God Talks with Arjuna or the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks to see Krishna's universal form, and Krishna sees Arjuna sees it, and it's called the vision of visions, and Arjuna is so shaken back by it. And this is like a similar experience, I think, for Srimati Kashi Moni. And Lahiri Mahashaya says woman, and the Sanskrit would have been nari, or Hindi or Bengali that they would have speaking nari, which is a affectionate term for a woman, a respectful, affectionate term. But of course, we've got the English translation here. That sounds a bit abrupt and perhaps a bit rude as well, but that's not the case or the intention. He said, seek for divine wealth, not the paltry tinsel of earth. After acquiring inward treasure, you'll find that outward supply is always forthcoming. And this almost feels like a paraphrasal of the divine teachings from the Sermon of the Mount in Matthew 24:34 from the Bible. Lauren, do you want to read that and Guruji's explanation of it?
But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. As for meeting the conditions imperative to life, your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. He expects the God-seeking man to perform useful, dutiful actions, but not as the materialist who has his eye and energies focused on selfish gain and sensuous pleasure. To seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness is to concentrate on the eternal life, the source of all lives, and to express the glory of that immortality in all interactions with the world. The ordinary man thinks only of food, possessions, and pleasure. That is all he pursues. Under the smokescreen of materiality, he has totally hidden God from his perception, cutting himself off from life's invigorating source, depleting his happiness, and draining dry the truly satisfying divine joys that inhere in his soul. To acquire everything needful with the mind resting principally on God is the sure way to happiness. To go after inflated necessities in a state of God forgetfulness will certainly lead to misery.
No matter how much the worldly man acquires, he never fully enjoys his situation, or he is never satisfied. He always looks for something more, or is afraid of losing what he has. The Western nations, at the height of industrial civilization, gorged with materiality, having not succeeded in producing a society free of depression and discontentment. Houses, money, or automobiles may be necessary to modern existence, but if man does not also give some time to God and meditation, the formula of his life will be missing, the catalyst necessary to produce true happiness. Unless one seeks the kingdom of God and establishes within himself its righteousness, peace and joy and wisdom, the contrasts of pleasure and sorrow in his life will foment inner discontentment, unbalance, and physical and spiritual deficiencies.
So this message from Lahiri Mahashaya must have hit home, because he says, one of my spiritual sons will make provision for you. And that eventually did come true. And because one of the disciples left a considerable sum for the family. The wife tells Swami Yogananda. And he says, I thank Kashi Muni for sharing with me her wondrous experiences. And the footnote says that the Venerable Mother passed away in Kashi, Banaras, or Varanasi in March the 25th, 1930, I think at the ripe age of 94. So she had a quite profound life, being married to Lahiri Mahashaya. What a blessed incarnation, if this was one of her last. Probably was, being married to Lahiri Mahashaya. That much grace. That's the rest. That's the last section that we'll cover today. Next week, we will look at two intricate miracles from Lahiri Mahashaya. We'll look at firstly, we'll look at his family, his sons that he has, and the qualities that they possess. And we've got three miracles that are recounted here in the book about the Lahiri Mahashaya's capability of using or breaking the laws of physics to stop a train um, for a devotee that he wasn't so pleased at doing, but he did it anyway. And then he said there was another instance where example of how blessed his picture is, and then again another instance where some disciples implore the Guru's help in their personal lives, and they do come true. I desire having children when it was presumed not possible before that. So thank you very much, everyone. Was there anything more, Lauren, or no?
No.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for the listeners and all the viewers and all the other supporters, and to God and Gurus. Jai Guru.
Very good.